Hey, good evening, everybody. How are you doing? This is Freddie Ewan, three-time GM of the Year, the 2022 Pantheon Cup champion, the 2023 regular season champion of the TPFF KAL, the 2024 runner-up, the 2025 playoff hopeful. Shout out to my boy Jimmy joining me as GM of the Year of the Donkey Dicks. Congratulations, Jimmy. Well deserved, brother. Very well deserved. And of course, once again, cousin Pat, man, cousin Pat, congratulations. You had shoved it in my face. I got your Jackson Dart jersey right here, cousin Pat, returning the bet. Beautiful. Anyway, this is going to be a interesting show today. We have so much information on this league that we are probably going to have to split it up into a different part series. But I can tell you, I wanted to thank everyone who joined and was a part of this. But the No Limit Fantasy Football League prototype is finished. We got all the information. Amazing concept. Guy who came up with this concept, Doug Hortzman, I can say his name, didn't play in the league, but he's just a guy who really thinks outside of the box. The commissioner wanted to put it together. A great friend of mine who I love to death. And really kind of said, okay, how are we going to do a no limit fantasy football league? One of the things that I thought, like, okay, you're going to have the teams that are spending a lot of money, getting a lot of players. You're probably going to have teams that are not spending a lot of money, not getting a lot of players. 12 team league. So I thought, to keep it somewhat kind of competitive, instead of having six playoff teams, to have eight playoff teams. And then the other thing that I thought might work out where the lower market teams could get a little bit of money back would be giving weekly points. So 25% of the prize pool was donated to the top three weekly points each week. Turned out to be a decent size, but we're gonna, that was my idea. We're gonna show you how that did not work out in the prototype. The other biggest issue with the prototype of this league was really, and I wish I did a better job of this, and a lot of that's on me, is that we did not get enough experienced GMs to be a part of the prototype. We had a couple of these guys who only played in the league on the show before, one guy really couldn't carry on the fantasy football conversation. The other guy came on as like some kind of like persona. They were just really, really bad interviews and really bad shows, but the level of experience, and don't get me wrong, some very good GMs were in that league. But I don't think enough to really get the hang of it and kind of put it all together to create the ultimate no limit fantasy football league. That was the big issue with this. That's going to change though, because we're going to have another prototype come out, but that is going to change, and we're going to get more into that a little bit later. But yeah, the inexperience of a lot of these GMs. One GM had never been in an auction draft before. I think one had never been in a fantasy football league before. And I think that if you're going to be in a no limit fantasy football league for the first time, then you need people with a little bit more experience to get these free flowing ideas and to get it right. The other issue is, once a league becomes a league, in almost 100% of cases, it becomes a democratic league where everyone has a 12th of a vote, a 14th of a vote, a 16th of a vote. Once again, the issue was just the inexperience of some of the GMs, and just some of the ideas that they have were just a little, just a little not thinking outside the box, and not really understanding the mathematics of it all and the data of it all, which is okay, which is perfectly okay, because we did get a ton of data from the prototype. We know what works and we know what doesn't work. What we're going to start trying to do is we're going to start putting together a really, really expert GMs and players. Obviously, I do have a fantasy football show, so I have a pretty good reach when it comes to fantasy experts and whatnot. And Magic Matt, my man, has already showed interest. Dang has showed interest. A couple other guys. We got a couple former NFL players that are going to be backing it, and giving their feedback, as well as some truly professional DFS guys and expert players, and hopefully we can really put together something that works. The goal is, you look at what happened with the Guillotine League. It was bought by Matthew Berry's company. I think it might have been 2 years ago, but the guy who invented it, just came up with it, playing it with his buddies out of nowhere, and now he's a multimillionaire. We really needed to develop an interface. The biggest thing about this league, another tough thing to find, and I'm not going to tell you what site I found it on, but another tough thing to find was unlimited auction values. It was tough to find a site that had unlimited auction values, and I had to search for that forever. Also, a big shout out to my man, J. Brian McCluskey, the Excel master. This guy put together a phenomenal Excel file that the commissioner was able to fill in every week as far as, spends, free agent spends, top points, weekly scoring. So we got a whole bunch of data from this, which is awesome. So J Dot, I love you. Good luck to your Seahawks in the Super Bowl, baby. Um, Amazing season. You're probably flying high. I miss you in fantasy football. I wish you were a part of this league because you could have provided so much input for it. But the lucky thing, it wasn't all. There were a couple really good players in this league too, two experts to that I consider experts, Dang and my boy, the GM of the Donkey Dicks. Um, so we're going to get into it. The other thing that we needed to talk about a little bit too is there was a luxury tax. And the luxury tax was kind of a failure too. The luxury tax is really, it wasn't really a luxury tax. If you went over $500, you had to pay an extra 50 cents per dollar that you spent on player. But the thing about the luxury tax was it was just part of the prize pool. So basically, it's like you know, I'm trying to think of a Major League Baseball is kind of a perfect example for no limit that has a luxury tax. The NBA has a soft cap. NFL obviously a hard cap, NHL obviously a hard cap, but the MLB is kind of the best thing to particular. And you look at the LA Dodgers, for instance, perfect example. They put a ton of money on the luxury tax. At the end of the year, when the Dodgers win the World Series, they don't get to keep a big portion of that luxury tax. Once you pay that luxury tax, it's gone. It's dispersed amongst the smaller market teams. Um, they call this the John Galt League. I don't really know. I know it's an Ayn Rand thing, but I don't really know the exact Atlas Shrugged dialect and dialogue. But I but I know, believing in almost a capitalist society and whatnot based on that league, which I can get that, but at the same time, I think that I'm not what happened with this prototype is the smaller market teams, even some of the mid-market teams, um, are, are going to find themselves really struggling to get to the top first, and then second, to really get any kind of premium return on investment, whatnot. Um, and I think that like they wanted to make at one point, I think, I know the discussion was about having no minimum spend or a minimum spend of a certain amount and whatnot. But if you're going to be in the league and spend a minimum, you're not going to, you have zero to nil chance. Now you have a chance to win a lot more money if you do than a regular league, but the the it's so minuscule that it didn't even make sense almost. So that's what we're going to get into. But we have the prototype, we have the data, which is super exciting. We also, when we put this together, we also have, who this kind of league can attract to, too. Almost the target audience that we're going to get to in another episode. Let me see if I can share this. I've actually tried this a couple of times and put in screen three. Let me see if it comes up. So it does say that I am sharing screen three right now. Let me just make 100% sure. Maybe I'm not. 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 Let me try this one more time. Been having a little issue with sharing the right screen. I am looking to share screen three, and I think I got it. I am officially sharing screen three. All right. That fantasy football report, fantasy football pyramid scheme. I don't know if it's a pyramid scheme, but certainly can turn into one the way that if the way keeps going without changes being made, where only the top teams that are spending are winning the money, while teams that are spending mid and bottom are not winning the money. That's how it's supposed to be in a no limit fantasy league. But with a few adjustments, this league can't be much different, and it will be. So we're just going to take a look at a couple teams. This is the team that actually won the fantasy football league. Um, I have the total spends here. I changed the names of the teams just to be just because I don't want to embarrass anyone or anything like that. We're not about that on the show. But let's get to this one first. This is the once again, J-Doc, great job doing this. But this is basically the GMs. I'm GM number one up there. I spent 560, 30, 15 in luxury tax. Then we have the commish there. Angry team. Then bad draft. We're gonna get into this guy. This is the guy who actually won the league, which had second top scoring. We're gonna talk about this fantasy expert here. We're gonna talk about his team, where he spent 675. Then we're gonna talk about the guy who didn't know what a keeper was, and we're gonna get into that in a little bit. And then we're gonna talk about the next fantasy expert. But in order, the guy bad draft came in first. Fantasy expert came down right here. He finished second. What's a keeper finished third, and that was where most of the money went to. But really cool job by J Dot. Really puts it all together. If you finish top 3 points, you got $90 a week. Total prize pool was 15,216, 2,726 in luxury tax. We're gonna get into the luxury tax in just a second. But just kind of an idea of how J Dot put that together, and just once again, a great job, J Dot. That is this graph right here is definitely going to be part of the prototype as we're going to talk about. But let's get back into this. We're going to talk about this team spent the second most, really close to the first guy. These two teams were first and second, way ahead of any other teams, almost close to 16, 1700, maybe $1,800, but really bad draft put together by this guy and teams. Justin Jefferson, bust. Saquon Barkley, more or less bust. CeeDee Lamb, hurt. Marvin Harrison, bust. Once again, you look at the things, you always know you're in a good league with players with not too much experience when they're playing a ton for quarterbacks in the one quarterback draft. Lamar Jackson, I think, was the highest guy, $411. Hurt most of the year. Luckily he had guys that hit. He did have guys that hit. Did a good job with Tyler Warren, I think. Derrick Henry obviously hit. Bijan Robinson hit. Drake London was decent for a little bit of time, but you can see here, I mean, this is just where, I think he had four out of the top six picks and maybe five first rounders with, two or three second rounders. I mean, the guy definitely paid for it. He paid, I mean, he was paid $1.03 per point scored. Not the best finishes by positions on some of these guys, except you see Bijan number two, so he did get some hit, but hey, Barkley has a bad year. It's all right. We got Bijan. Jefferson has a good year. All right, we got CD. Most leagues you're gonna see in most auction leagues, maybe one team have two first round guys. And obviously in snake drafts, you're going to have, one, but, the whole world's moving away from snake drafts and moving more towards auction leagues. Auction leagues have been around for 15, 16 years now. So really nothing new, but yeah, I mean, you're not going to see this where a guy's going to be able to load up like this, which makes it cool, but also, not a great team when you look at it on paper and price. So, we want to get to, we put an XY axis over here. This is the spending on the bottom based on the number of points this season, and you look at the guys under $200. He had no one over 200 points that he spent less than $200 for. Obviously, a couple guys that he spent more than $200 for that were under 200 points with Jefferson Lamb. $300 for Henry hit Bijan. Of course, his highest paid guy, was quarterback 450, plus luxury tax for Lamar Jackson, where you look Dak. And you can see as the blue circle gets darker, this is really where you want to get here. And we're going to compare the other teams too. So this is, oh, I put his name here, but this is, he doesn't care. This is my boy Mike Dang. He's been on the show before. Great show. You can keep keepers in this league. And I traded him JSN for, I think, Tyrone Tracy last year, but obviously kept JSN, Pickens, Bucky Irving, I mean, great keeper price, but Bucky just didn't fare well. Devontae Adams, who had a great year. Rashid Rice, after a little bit, he made a lot of trades too. He was able to get Drake May, I think, for Rashid Rice, Kyle Pitts for $6, and Kyle Pitts actually ended up having a great year. But we look at his team in this graph, and really, I mean, this is where you want to get to. We're gonna get to Jimmy's in a second, which is even better than Danks. But you look at this guy, he's got JSN for up here. He's got Pickens where he pays a little bit more, $100, gets him over 250 points. Adams almost over the points. Pitts, I mean, I think he paid $15 for it, but this is really the area you want to get. He's got no players over 250, whatnot, but yet he's getting all these points where you look back at this, it's really just, there's just no one in the blue almost. And then when you get down, but basically Dank finished in second and spent a lot less. Great keepers though, really paid great keepers that had a lot to do with it. Now we get to I call this guy Erwin R. Shyster because we're gonna get into the keepers before, but same thing. This is another thing that I thought was a little bit problem with the prototype of this league is that you can basically draft. I don't know how many bench spots there had, 7 or 8, but you can really draft Josh Allen and then 8 more quarterbacks if you wanted to block everyone out. So kind of a good strategy. This guy drafted Josh Allen. Once again, you're in a good league when the highest paid player is a quarterback. Then he paid $200 for Jalen Hurts, and I don't think he played Jalen Hurts all year. Even though Jalen Hurts got him more points per dollar. Amon St. Brown, $300, Christian McCaffrey, 200. So this guy had a decent team. He had a couple beat up, but James Cook paid a lot of money for these guys. And then when we look at his graph, I mean, he spent the same thing as this guy in Team A, bad draft. And see, I mean, he's got one guy over here. And then when we look down here back at the graph, I mean, look at all these guys that really paid a lot for him, but really hit. Cook hit, Hurts, who didn't play hit, but, big for CMC hit, Allen hit. I think they were number one. ASB, Nico paid a lot for, still over 200 points, but really just no one right here at all, which is really how you want to get the most plus EV, but really didn't matter in this league. McBride, this guy had a lot better picks than Team A, as you can see, had a lot better players. I mean, you're looking at like CMC and Cook, who were, I mean, went off and Josh Allen, compared, went off as well. So now we're gonna look at my boy and take a look at this graph. This graph is beautiful. This is my boy Jimmy, smart GM of the year in the TPFFKL. Very hard to do. Puka, Gibbs were his keepers. He got Stafford for $10. Skeet above for $14 if that guy wasn't even hurt. Who knows what he would have done? $15 for Ladd McConkey. I think that was probably a keeper. $33 for Bowers. But then went on and spent. Maybe didn't hit on Wilson, but I mean. Caleb Williams as his backup quarterback almost for $25, and Matthew Stafford. You're seeing guys spending $400, $350 for Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, and Matt Stafford's, is had more points than or had almost as much points as Allen. But look at this. I mean, look at this graph. This is where you want to get up here. Guy had no one over $150. You look at Gibbs, hits the 350 points. Look at Pookie, paid $125 for him, gets him up around $25. The quarterbacks, both under $50, hits it. Another big one. 30, 40 books for Javonte Williams, gets 225 points. Kyron Williams still under $100, get you 250 points. You can even make a case for Swift and Sutton on here. Skeetabo, even though he got hurt, you can even make a case for him. You paid 12 bucks for him. Only bad pick was Wilson. Waddle. You didn't pay a lot for Waddle, got the points out of him. But really impressive GM. And these two GMs, teams B and teams D are they're the two best GMs in the league, hands down. This is we're gonna go through this. This is the fantasy football by spending and luxury tax. I showed you this graph before. $2,726.13 was in luxury tax, and this went to the prize pool, which I think they really need to, we're really gonna need to change this around luxury tax wise. After putting the prototype in. So, the current luxury tax is not a penalty. For teams that purchase more, it simply adds more money to the pot for a higher priced team to increase the chances. Absolutely true. The Major League Baseball luxury tax is dispersed to small market teams. Very hard to do in a fantasy football league. Hey, you're going to pay a luxury tax. We're going to give it to a bunch of guys who didn't pay. Doesn't make sense. But have to get together. I don't know the answers for all this. Gonna have to get together with some true experts and really talk about how the luxury tax needs to be dispersed differently than what happens. One thing, and they gave me shit about it when I brought up to them, but is the teams based on spend that exceed expectations. And they said this because I exceeded expectations both years, and it's the truth. And the same thing when you look at the experts, which is this guy Dang, an Arabian stud. Same thing. He spent sixth. He actually finished first in the standings. Dang spent eighth, finished fourth in the standings. I spent the 10th most, finished seventh in the standings. Maybe if I had spent a little bit more, I can find myself up here a little bit more. But this is how much they paid per win, price per win, just to get an idea. It's one guy spent $363 per win, and our guy $342 per win. Pretty crazy. Um, and this was the spending by teams the first year, went drastically higher, but I just wanted to show you this is the top three, 3 to 6, 7 to 9, 10 to 12, and you can see that not a big difference between the top three and 3 to 6. 10 to 12 gets a lot lighter, twice as low as 7 to 9, but this was the first year, and then you look at the graph in the second year, big difference, big difference where the top three teams spent $7,500, and really the top two teams spent about 40% of the total prize pool. And then it's like everyone spent more, as you can see, but that graph of the top three teams, and then the rest is really what this is leading to is something like this. If they put in a minimum spend where the top three teams are just gonna get bigger and bigger, paying more luxury tax, but winning that luxury tax. And then, by the time you get to the 4 year projection, it's guys are gonna, if there's a minimum buy or something, guys are gonna be spending, hey, I don't have $9,000 to spend on a fantasy football league. I can spend 1,000. This guy's spending $10,000 to win his fantasy league. You know, people that's going to blow up at some point, obviously. The weekly points, this is on me, did not work. I'm going to show you why. The top six paying teams won 76% of the weekly points. Um, teams 6 to 9 spending, you just see it right here. So the top three spending teams won $1,700 back. Weekly points 10 through 12 on the bottom, and I was 10th. I was the one who won this whole little yellow thing right here. Teams 11 and 12 who spent did not win any total points in year one or year two, which is really designed to get teams who don't spend as much to still compete and have an opportunity to get points. And as you can see, that is not working. So the weekly points did really not work in that league. And once again, I don't have all the answers, but I know that I know that people, now that this league is a democracy, that based on their experience, they don't have all the answers either. But we're gonna get that fixed with the right people in place. So I put this together too. This is based on standings, and this was really interesting. Top weekly points and in this no limit league standings versus a stand-in auction keeper league or them, and this is the top points, top three in points weekly. So as you can see, the blue graph is teams 1 through 3. I think they hit like 22 times where. And you get down to teams 4 through 6, they got 12 top points. Then you just get down teams 7 and 9 got 10 or 11 top points. And then when you get teams 10 through 12, there is nothing in the blue for the no limit league. And as you can see with the orange, which is the standing auction league, and this was based on standings, some teams have much better teams than other teams, but you can see it's about even as top points are getting in. And that's what I think I was hoping for in this league. I guess I didn't even know what was going to happen where, guys were obviously going to spend, we're going to get much, much more point differential than the other team. So that is first what we have on the graphs. We're going to talk about the luxury tax. We're going to talk about all that more. We're going to get some luxury tax dispersing ideas. We're going to talk about keepers in auction drafts. I want to get into this, and we talk about inexperience in this league, and this was the thing. This is one of my favorite WWE wrestlers when I was growing up. Erwin R. Shyster, IRS. This guy was fantastic. This guy was like the ultimate bad guy. But anyway, so before we get into this, where can I get it? Do I have it in here? Do I have it in here? I might have took this out somewhere. I might have took this out, but yeah, one guy, basically, I got to find it. I got to find it. I don't think I took it out. Maybe I did. Yeah, I think I took it out, but I got to put it back in. There's one guy who basically he spent $3,000 and the guy spent $3,000. He could have kept Josh Allen for I think like $200. He could have kept he could have kept James Cook for like $60, and he could have kept one other guy, one other big guy for I forget who I forget who it was. But anyway, the guy spent a total of he didn't keep any keepers. And then when the draft happened, he went and drafted all these guys that he could have kept for about almost $800 more than what he could have kept him for, which I don't know whether he didn't know what a keeper was or what or I want to ask him. I'd really love to have him on the show and ask him like, "Hey man, what was the strategy or the concept behind dropping players that you could have kept and then spending actual dollars to buy them for $800 more. I don't know what the concept was there, the strategy. But once again, that comes back to, kind of the inexperience of a lot of these guys in the prototype. But at the same time, I want to thank them all very, very much because the information, the data has been just excellent that we've gotten. And we're really going to turn No Limit Fantasy Football into the next big thing. And this was really the first start. So, I mean, I just want to thank you guys for participating in it. And, really, really, once the app comes out, you guys will be the first ones to get it. I promise you. Anyway, I hope everyone had a great evening. We have a lot more to talk about in this league. We're going to have a lot of guests on this show in the next couple weeks talking about fantasy football in the offseason. Dang is going to come on and discuss a bunch of stuff that I can't wait. Magic Matt's going to come up and discuss a bunch of stuff. Bo is going to get on here and discuss a bunch of stuff. Former NFL football player, won the Super Bowl with the Ravens, went to the Super Bowl with the New England Patriots. Great guy, big fantasy football player. He's going to get on the show and talk about it. We're also going to have Robert Blanton, who's on the show. He's former defensive back for the Minnesota Vikings. He's going to be on the show. And also, we're going to have Tariq Whitehead, former linebacker for the Las Vegas Raiders and the Detroit Lions. All really great dudes, all big fantasy football players. We've sent them all the data. They're going to crush the data too. We're going to get a couple real experts on the show too, that we really can't wait to talk about. But this is going to be very exciting times putting this together, and you're going to get it all in this show. And it's going to be once we get this going, I am so excited for it because this could be the future of fantasy football, or at least the evolution of fantasy football, which is what we are trying to obtain here. I'm ecstatic about it. I am really ecstatic about it. I cannot wait. We're going to talk more about this league soon. We're going to talk about some new things coming up in this league, and we are going to talk about the future of fantasy football again very soon. Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks for putting up with me. Freddie Ewan, three-time GM of the year, that fantasy football show with Freddie Ewan. Have a great evening, everyone. I'm going to post all this stuff too on the bomb so you can check it out. This is open for everyone to read. I'd love to hear everyone's opinions on it. Really would. Thank you.